Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as Ruben Amorim goes nuclear on the Manchester United board. This is civil war in Manchester United and to be honest with you, I'm quite happy about it because it's what's needed. Breaking news, Manchester United has been declining for 20 years. Breaking news, we've got a bunch of Project Prats in charge of the football club who need exposing. And you might not like Amorim's style of play and you might not think he's the guy. But what he's done after this Leeds game and during his press conference on Friday is well and truly throw a cat amongst the pigeons in a club that needs to be exposed. Sack the board, replace the owners. Amorim is the guy that is exposing the difficulties at that club. And ultimately, he's saying back me or sack me, and ultimately he will be sacked because the Prats rule the circus. But even if he does go, like Ralph Rangnick before him, he's exposed the idiotic tendencies of this football club over the last few years that continue to decay and cause issues. So, look, all those people out there that have told us for the last few weeks that we're the negative stand, that this community is negative, to support the project. I even saw somebody last week challenging us to a debate about why we need to get behind the project. They must feel very idiotic now with their little TikToks because, and it's not their fault, but this is why we don't back the project, because even the manager doesn't back the project and the board doesn't back the manager. So all these people out there telling people to stop moaning and to get behind the project. What project? It's disintegrating and it's nothing to do with the fans. Wilcox, Amorim, Barada, Ineos, the Glazers, it's chaos. So what project are these toxic positivity fans actually backing? You absolute lemmings. You're jumping off a cliff with a smile on your face. There is no bloody project. I don't need to tell you that. No negative United fan needs to tell you that. There is no project. The manager's literally saying it's falling apart. And some people are going, stop moaning. Just trust the process. How can you trust the process when the manager hasn't got a process because the board doesn't trust him? It's chaos. It's civil war. It's disintegration. And that's where we are tonight. And the question is, what happens next? Why is Ruben Amorim doing that? And what will the board do in response? Because there's no coming back from this, by the way. There are multiple options that can happen. But there is no coming back from this. We might get some sort of PR propaganda cover-up where, you know, everybody's getting on again. But you know as well as I do, in any relationship, working or personal, when the trust is gone, you can pretend to stay together for the kids. You can see your contract out, but ultimately the trust is gone. The honeymoon is over. And this is the beginning of the end for somebody. Now, is it the beginning of the end for the owners? I bloody hope so. Is it the beginning of the end for Wilcox and Barada? I hope so. But ultimately, I think it will be the beginning of the end for Amorim because it's always the manager. It's always the manager that pays the price. But look, how has it got so bad that effectively Ruben Amorim is saying this? I came here to be the manager of Manchester United, not to be the coach. I know my name is not Conte, Tuchel, Mourinho, but I'm the manager of Manchester United. It's going to be like this for 18 months or until the board decide to change. I'm not going to quit. I'll do my job until another guy is coming here to replace me. I came here to be manager of Manchester United, not the head coach. Every department, scouting, sporting director, they need to do their job and I'll do mine for 18 months and we'll move on. And then he walked out. So, I mean, you could analyse that for 3 hours, but basically what he's saying is, and I'll tell you why Wilcox and Barada have got a problem and Ineos have got a problem as well. But what Amorim is saying there is, I've been lied to. I have been lied to. I have not been backed. I am the manager. I am not a head coach. A head coach is the modern way of doing things where you're a good boy, you coach the team, you get given the players you're told, the players that get sold you don't have a say in. You're just there to coach the players and win games and lose games, whatever. As a manager, you have a say in signings, you have a say in who's being sold, you have the final say in tactics. You are the manager, you are not a head coach. So what Ruben Amorim is basically saying is, I've been lied to. I am now being treated like a head coach when I'm a manager. I am not getting the signings I was promised. I'm being told to tweak my system. You know, I am basically not being treated like I was told I would be treated a year ago. And basically, the sporting director should focus on their job and I'll do my job and then we'll all part ways in 18 months. Because ultimately, the sporting director is Jason Wilcox. I'm reading between the lines and looking and listening and speaking to people this afternoon. What's happened in the last few weeks is that the sporting director, the CEO, and I presume Ineos, have started to tell Amorim to change his system and that he's not getting signings because he's changing his system. Now, that might be music to your ears, and it might be music to certain ex-players' ears, but I completely disagree with this. I completely disagree with this. He is not a back four manager. We recruited him as a 3-4-3 coach, and we've decided a year in that that's too hard, so please change. That is incredibly crap from our recruitment team, our board, to do that. Now, if you as a fan want a back four, you get a back four manager. But you don't recruit a guy who doesn't play that and then tell him a year in, you know, we told you we were going to back you to do a 3-4-3. You know, we don't like it. We don't want you to do it. And the best of all is that we're getting leaks tonight that Wilcox and co have told him to change his formation because it's not working. But it's not working because you haven't given him the players. You haven't given him the players for the system. You've not given him any wing backs. You've not given him any midfielders. So how can you ask him to change his system when you haven't given him the players to prove the system works? Of course it's not going to work with the shit that sacked Ten Hag. You know, they sacked Ten Hag. You can't say, we know you play 3-4-3, but you can't get it to work with these shit players that sacked Ten Hag. You've got to back him. You've got to give him the players. You can't say, go and play a back four now because it's not working. So I completely understand Amorim. I understand people who want to play a back four, but that's not who Amorim is. So what he's saying is, at last, is what some of us have been saying for a while. If Man United want to play a back four, you sack Ruben Amorim and you bring a back four coach in. You can't recruit a 3-4-3 guy and then a year later say, we're abandoning your policies, we're going to get you to play a back four. He can't play the back four. He doesn't want to play a back four. And it's unfair that he's being asked to do that. It's not who he is. So they should sack him. And that's what he's saying. He's basically saying, I've been lied to. I was told I was the manager. I'm now being treated like a head coach. Because a manager would have the owner say, I want you to play a back four. And the manager would say, I've got 18 months left on my contract. I'm not playing a back four. Buy me players for my system because I'm not changing. And that's basically what today is all about. Some people are confused. Apparently, some of the journalists after the game were like, after the press conference were like, what does he mean? He's basically saying this. I've been told, I've been treated like a head coach. I've been told to change my tactics and that I'm not going to get any signings. But when I came here, I was told I would get signings to play my way. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the manager. I am not a head coach. So I'm not going to get told I'm not getting players, and I'm not going to get told I've got to change my system. I'm going to do things my way, and I'm going to ask for players, and the sporting director's job is to give me them, not to tell me I've got to change my formation and I'm not getting signings. So that's where we are tonight. And I tell you what, I'm bloody grateful for it. And that's where we are. It's as simple as that. They have moved the goalposts. They've told him to change his formation, and they've told him he's not going to get any signings. And he's saying, check my fucking contract. I'm the manager. I'm not a head coach. I'll play my way, get me my players, or sack me. And that's where we are. And it's as simple as that. Sorry, there was a comment here that surprised me. Wayne says, I can't believe you took that opinion off. Well, it's very obvious, Wayne. I can't believe you didn't see it as that. It's you know, and I've spoken to many journalists this afternoon, and I've read many articles today, and everybody has taken that from it. This is simply Wilcox and Barada deciding that they can't fund the 3-4-3 because it needs 2 wing-backs and it needs 2 midfielders. They can't afford it. So they're basically saying to him, we need European football. The best way of getting European football is if you play a back four because we're not going to give you any signings. And he's saying, That's not what you said to me when you gave me the job, so sack me or back me. And that's as simple as it is. And he's right. He's fucking right. Even though I like a back four, he's not the guy who should have to do it. They're treating him like a head coach. He's the fucking manager. He's not a head coach who you tell what to do. So he is right. The circus is very much in town at Old Trafford again. And ultimately, where we go from here is, it's a power play. Now, what I would do, and I don't know whether Man United are in a position to do it, I would say, Wilcox and Barada, you have basically reigned over a big, festering, steaming turd for 2 years, and you have no pedigree at all for me to trust you. You're fired. You're fired. I'll get a new director of football in and I'll get a new CEO in. See you later. Piss off. You know, that's what I would do. But what will happen is because they are basically puppets to the Glazers and Ineos, is Amorim will lose his job. Probably in May. So I don't see a way back from this. I don't think it's the beginning of the end, because I think the beginning of the end was when they didn't bring him in his players in the summer that he needed, and this season has been progressively getting worse and worse. But I definitely think that that's the way it's going to go, because I don't think Ruben Amorim strikes me as the sort of guy that's submissive and, you know, goes against his morals. So he's clearly not going to do it. And what he's done in that press conference today is what Maresca did 2 weeks ago. And look at how that ended. Maresca, 2 weeks ago, basically said the same thing. You know, I'm being told to do things I don't want to do. And it ends up like this. So I think that, well, it might not be May, actually. Very good point. ICD says, why May? It may not be May. It may be in the next 2 weeks. But I think it's the beginning of the end. And ultimately, you know, we were probably ahead of the game in this community, because I had no indication that Amorim was going to do what he did. I wish I did. I wish I could say I knew this was coming. We started speaking about this on New Year's Eve. We need to focus on the board. We need to focus on Wilcox. We need to focus on Barada. They are the real villains of the piece. And here we are, in a matter of days, absolutely, they're exposed wide open. So maybe Amorim watches the United stand, I don't know. Maybe he watches the United stand and realises that if he wants to protect himself, he needs to expose the real issues, because that is what he has done. He has completely, in his last 2 interviews, blown the bloody doors off any project or any, you know, everyone's on the same hymn sheet. I'll tell you what, the one person I want to hear from here is Pinocchio, Sir Jim Radcliffe. I want to know whether he's Pinocchio or he's a human, because he sat there in October saying 3 years for Amorim. He said 3 years for Amorim. 3 months later, he might be sacking him. So if Sir Jim Radcliffe is true to his word, it's bye-bye Wilcox, it's bye-bye Barada, and it's supporting this manager properly, because I will support Amorim if the club support him. But I won't support the club if they don't. I don't want to see another sacking. I don't want to see another Ralph Rangnick walking out the club, because he's got more excuses than anybody if they sack him. He has. There's been no wide players brought in a system that's crying out for wide players. He's not had the midfielders he wanted. He wanted Ollie Watkins, not Sesko. And we've got a striker that's struggling with no confidence and who is a project. The whole thing's been a bloody mess. And who does that fall down on? Wilcox and Barada. And the bloody cheek of it that they've gone, change your formation, it's not working, when they were the idiots who sat there and signed off on Amorim coming in as a 3-4-3 coach. It's an absolute shit show. And you know what? As I've said many times before, they're very lucky that there isn't a United fan base to remove this ownership, because what they're doing to the football club, this is 2026. We've left 2025 behind. We said on New Year's Eve that has got to go down as one of the worst years in our Premier League history. 15th in the league, Europa League final loss to Spurs, absolute shit show. Hopefully 2026 will be better. In the first week of 2026, we've got a manager basically exposing our board as changing their mind a year into a project and trying to treat him like a head coach and bully him into doing something he doesn't want to do. It's a fucking joke. It's an absolute joke. And someone in the chat just said, bring Xavi in. Bring Xavi in. Bring your next manager in. They'll be in this position in the next 2 years. Definitely, 100%. 100%, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. Look at what's happened in the last 2 years under Ineos. You've got Sir Jim Ratcliffe calling Dan Ashworth a 10 out of 10 sporting director and then sacking him within 3 months. You've got Erik ten Hag being kept in the job and being given 300 million and then he's sacked within 3 months. We then bring in Ruben Amorim, who plays a system that's nothing like we've ever played and needs at least $500 million in the first 18 months. And a year later, they're telling him to play a back four because they can't afford to back him. I mean, it's just a shit show. And that's factual stuff. It's just a shit show. And 3 months ago, Sir Jim Ratcliffe says we're going to back Amorim for 3 years. So what are we? It's a farce. But what I will say is, Amorim has made mistakes. Picking Bruno Fernandes in the midfield is criminal. You know, some of the things he's done is weird. But he didn't want Sesko. He wanted an experienced striker. He wanted a midfielder. He didn't get it. He needs wide players. He got given a 20-year-old from Lecce. He's not been given experience in a team that is lacking experience. He's not been given key players in a team that needs key players. And he's certainly not been given enough players to play his system. He's having to rely on players that sacked Erik ten Hag. It's a shit show. Whatever you think of Amorim, it's a shit show. And whatever you think about Ruben Amorim, I reckon this is the end of Amorim. But I think it's about time the Amorim outers realise that that's going to happen. But you might want to start applauding him on the way out, because what he's done in the last 2 days is exactly what Ralf Rangnick did. It's a noble, brave thing to do, to stand up to this oppression and call it for what it is. Why should he protect them like previous managers have? Why should his reputation go down the sewer? Why should he be the guy that's being ridiculed on Sky and TalkSport and everything else every week, when it's actually the people at the top that are performing this shit show? You know, they're conducting this shit show. So Amorim's gone up hugely in my estimations over the last few days because, yes, he's made mistakes. Yes, he might not be the guy, but bloody hell, he clearly hasn't been backed. And the way he's been treated by the club, yet again, another manager has been thrown to the wolves. It happened to Ollie, it happened to Jose, it happened to Rangnick, it happened to Ten Hag, and now it's happening to Amorim. And fair play to him for standing up for himself and calling people out and basically saying he's been lied to and treated like shit, and he's now expected to be the fall guy. And if he's going to go out fighting, and I respect that. I respect that. He could have stayed quiet. He could have just took the money. He could have just pretended everything was okay, and he hasn't. He's got, you know, there's aspect to Amorim's personality that is perfect for this football club, but unfortunately, he hasn't got a board that matches him. And we haven't got a board that matches us. We've got a board that is incompetent and useless. And we're going to be left with that board when Amorim's gone. And that's the sad thing. Until we change the ownership, we will keep coming back to this situation. And we will keep saying it can't get any worse. And then it does get worse. It does. Let me get into some of your comments anyway. Please do smash a like on the video. And look, I just will say before I get into your comments, I know sometimes United news can be sensationalist. I know sometimes you wander off down an alleyway of prediction. Without a shadow of a doubt, where we are tonight is catastrophic for the Glazers and Ineos. Where we are tonight is huge in the sense that this is not prediction, this is not speculation, this is factual. Our manager today, after that game, has basically said, I've been lied to, I'm being treated like shit. People are trying to tell me what to do when I'm the manager. They should focus on their jobs and do their jobs because they're not doing their jobs and leave me to do mine. That is pretty symbolic and it is pretty seismic in relation to you don't normally get that sort of behaviour. You don't get that sort of honesty and you don't get a public falling out like that very often. And as I said, it's not dissimilar to some other managers that have done this. More recently, Maresca, and it doesn't normally end that well for the manager. But I don't think it was going to end well anyway. And he obviously has his principles. So this is big. This is going to be big news. And we might get to some sort of calming it down. There's another press conference coming up for Burnley. And we might get to some, I'm pretty sure There'll be some behind-the-scenes meetings at Manchester United, probably tonight, if not tomorrow. But ultimately, what really should happen from a footballing club point of view is you remove the manager quickly, or you remove the director of football and the CEO quickly. And unfortunately, I think I know which one we'd rather do. But Berardi and Wilcox have presided over more shit than Amorim. And they've cost us more money than Amorim. And they've made more mistakes than Amorim. And they're learner drivers. Then they're not experienced people. They don't have a CV. So for me, that's what that they should be going, but they won't. They'll survive because we did this for years with Woodward. You know, the people that are wrong tend to stay. Yud says, let me say this, Goldbridge was right. It's not about being right, mate. You know, I found it hard over Christmas when you're reading comments about people saying, you're always so negative, you're always moaning. But it was always coming from this place. The club is a mess. It's ran badly. It's a shit show. And all right, it's come out publicly now. And the people who are saying trust the project haven't got a leg to stand on because what are you trusting? But it's not about being right. It's just about having the experience to know that you cannot back this manager when he's not being backed himself. You cannot back this project when the manager and the project don't get on. And you cannot back Man United when it's run by clowns. It's a circus and people need to be more vocal about it. And in my opinion, and I think a lot of people share it now, the real problem is not the players. It is not the manager. They are a problem. But the main problem is a board that is fucking clueless and an ownership that is catastrophic. And I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen over the next days and weeks, because ultimately I think it's going to lead to another manager coming in and we'll be back here again in a year or two. But I want to see proper change. I want to see new owners. I want to see the debt gone. I want to see these pretenders gone. I mean, I'm not, you know, when the cameras pan to Berardi and Wilcox and Sir Jim and the Glazers, I'm not proud. They're not Man United people. Do you know that Avram Glazer's been out in Dubai for the last the last couple of weeks, watching his cricket club play? He's been at about 4 or 5 matches. I don't think he's been at 4 or 5 Man United matches in the last 5 years. So, you know, this is the whole club is poisoned to the very core. And I wish I could sit here and say I think it will lead to genuine change. I won't. But if it's not going to lead to genuine change, I'm more than happy to watch it crumble and the reality and truth to be shown, because it is a shit show. And I'm tired, like all of you are, of us papering the cracks and pretending that we're actually competent when we're not. It's a shit show. And when a manager is sat there basically saying it's a shit show, I actually find it quite satisfying. I find it quite gratifying. I find it quite quite funny that the manager of the club is basically saying this is a shit show. And yet you've got other people trying to tell us to trust the project, and the manager's basically saying the project's a shit show. So, you know, what I think will happen is Amorim will be sacked. But it shouldn't be him who is sacked. But there we go. Callan says, I'm going to get into your comments now. Callan says, sack the board. Let's get this trending. Them clowns deserve to go before any manager, says Callan. Well, they've got no association with the football club anyway. If these people survive, who are they? They're not Man United people. This is why we fail. 15 Premier League wins in 14 months is unforgivable. Both him and the owners can get out, says yes, mate. And you're not wrong. I mean, the win ratio is probably below 40% now. But if I was Ruben Amorim and somebody said that to me, on my way out, I'd say, well, you know what? Good luck. I've got my money. I've been sacked. Fair play. But good luck to the next manager, because he's going to have to deal with that shit. And there's no manager in the last 10 years that's got this club anywhere near where it needs to be because of those idiots. So see you later. I'll crack on with my career elsewhere. Those lot of shit. And that's basically, I think, what he's saying. Back me or sack me. Backing him means buying in January. If they don't buy anybody in January, they may as well sack him. They may as well get Darren Fletcher in as planned and give him the interim till the summer, because that's the plan anyway. So they may as well just do it tomorrow, give Darren Fletcher the job. We might have an Ollie bounce. It's a shit squad, and the win ratio is shit. You're absolutely right. But if you bring somebody in with a style of play and you don't give them the ingredients and they do shit, they're always going to have a ready-made excuse. Matthew says, Amorim's arrogance is grim. You're not Jose, pal. You'll always get the Glazer bots. They're on X. They'll be on here as well. Good to see Amorim following through on what he said before. When I need to say something, I will say it naturally with no bullshit. I'm really direct, says Ian Tracy. Matthew says we'll get one of two things tomorrow. It's announced that Amorim leaves the club, or we get a load of bullshit transfer rumours to shut the fans up, says Matthew. Don't shut up. Don't shut up. It's as simple as that. And it's a big week for United as well. Burnley should be a win. Brighton in the Cup needs to be a win. And then we've got the Manchester Derby. So these next 3 games for our season are massive. We have to beat Burnley, whether we play well or not. We need to beat Brighton to stay in a cup. And then it's a Manchester Derby that's massive. So the next 3 games are really big. Really, really big. And it's not very harmonious, is it? Mark, Amorim plays Bruno in the midfield because he's forced to. The club didn't buy many midfielders in the summer and bought 2 number 10s. No, I agree. I still wouldn't do it, but I agree. Don't like tactics. As supported since Best and Robson. Not Amorim's fault, as that's his style. However, looking forward to the new stadium pictures next week, says Paul. Emily Derry says every manager is like Indiana Jones gone wrong. Starts off heroic, then rope snaps as he swings out over a pit of vipers, leading to a toxicity and a feeding frenzy. Won't change with this regime. No, it won't. You're absolutely right, Emily. Nerfin says, but the problem is that we haven't been able to get these owners out. So how do we think we can do that now? Last season should have got the owners out. Look, whether there's a plan to do it, whether it can be done or not, you know my stance. I firmly believe this football club will never win the Premier League or the Champions League with this ownership. There is too much debt, there is too much incompetence, and they are not football people. So unless they're removed, I don't see a way back. If you want the occasional Champions League qualification and a domestic trophy, then I think this ownership can do that. But I don't think they can do anything more than that. And some people seem to just sit back and pray for a miracle, but it won't happen. So if you want change, maybe you should be more vocal about it. You know, we certainly are. We need a change of ownership. And I'll tell you what, if anybody comes forward with the ability to buy the football club, we would get behind it, as I'm sure many of you would as well. But there is nobody out there. There is nobody trying. It's all right saying getting the owners out. You need somebody to step forward and say, we want the club. We're going to do what we can to get the club. That's how it starts. The only reason Sir Jim's here and Qatar were there was because the Glazers said they wanted to sell or bring in investment. At the moment, there's nobody out there either. So how do you get owners out when you haven't got an alternative? There needs to be an alternative. The Glazers own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers too, and they've just had a complete collapse. Get rid of these prats. Love the show, says Sean. Thank you, everybody. Please do smash a like and subscribe, by the way, if you are new, or if you are not new. Please do smash a like. 6th place without a midfield and experienced striker. Imagine what we could do if we were fully backed, says King. Well, you know what? I do want to just say this. There is a lot of criticism of Amorim, and the Premier League season has been very, very strange. But we're not 15th in the league this year. We are joint 5th. We've got no midfield. We've got an experienced guy up front. He's got no wide players been brought in. And we are 3 points off 4th. Imagine where we would be if he'd got Ollie Watkins up front or an experienced striker and they'd bought him a midfielder in the summer. Imagine where we would be. I would say we'd be at least 6 or 7 points better off and we'd be comfortably in the top 4. So as much as you might not like Amorim, and as much as I'm not convinced about Amorim, what he's basically saying is, I've not been backed and they're not supporting me. So the way I look at it is, how far are we off Champions League football, which would have been very much an appetising prospect at the start of the season? Not that far. So he's saying I've not been backed and I'm not being allowed to do my job, and yet we're still 3 or 4 points off 4th. If he was being backed and he was being allowed to do his job, where would we be? And that's all, maybe some of you'd say, well, we wouldn't be any better. But maybe we would be better. And if we were better, we'd be in a better position. So for me, he's not wrong. They need to back him. And, if I was Sir Jim Radcliffe, I'd be looking at this and going, I'm 3 points off 4th place. I've got a director of football and a CEO who are causing me shit. And this manager is basically saying he's not being backed publicly. I'm going to back this manager and see where he gets me in May. And these two, you're on your last chance. That's what I would do, but I don't know whether it'll go that way. I really don't. Next manager won't last 18 months with Glinios, says Rude. Half decent manager gets us top 4 with this team. I think you're absolutely talking out your arse, Ashy. This is not a good team. Hi, Mark. Merson just said that Chelsea is not a good job. They're not in charge, just coaching. United is no different, as Amorim just confirmed to Slippy. We still need midfielders, whoever the manager is, says Nick. Defensively, we're fine, but back him and give him what he wants. These are repudiated owners that have misguided this man and shut the door in his face, says Slow Sports News. Hi, Mark. I've decided I won't buy anything from the club anymore. Hopefully others will do the same, says M. Glinios out. Keel Robinson says, can we stop? Please stop looking to flashy European managers who have no connection to United. I feel sorry for Amorim, but it's obvious it was a mismatch, says Keel. Well, it's not just the manager, mate. Can we stop bringing in people into position of power who've got no association with Manchester United? Because the last time I checked, Omar Barada and Jason Wilcox weren't lifelong Man United fans who know anything about the club either. Spot on as always, Mark. He's been thrown under the bus, but he needs applauding. Brilliant to speak against these clowns, says Sam. He was signed as head coach. He signed his contract as head coach, says Chiri. Well, he clearly didn't. He clearly didn't, Chiri, because that's not what he's saying. He said I was signed as a manager, not a head coach. So a head coach wouldn't have a say on the board either. He's got a veto on the board. He's not got a veto. He's got a say on the board. Mojo says, managerial 10 years at United are being cut short since Ollie's sacking. How can any side build when you sack a manager every 18 months? It is getting shorter, Mojo. You're right. The tactics work against the best in England and Europe with his players at Sporting and the mess at United. Imagine United quality Amorim type players. He's United forever. Now we understand why he was so stubborn, says Mr. Lawrence. Amorim will be sacked this week, 100%. An urgent meeting is scheduled for tomorrow after Amorim comments. I think 99% that he is gone, said Ayus. And look, if they do sack him, I really hope, and I'm wrong, this won't happen. If we sack him and they bring a new manager in, most of our fan base will get lost in the, excitement of a shiny new toy. I really do hope some remain pointing the fingers at the owners because they're the real issue. They're the real issue. But it'll be the manager who gets the blame. The guy who's responsible for about 25% of the blame will take 100% of the blame and will be left with the real problem at the football club still. And I think you're right. New shiny toy manager comes in and he'll be the fall guy. But how many times has that happened? Ten Hag, Ollie, Ranić, Mourinho. Every single time that's happened, and we still end up in the same position. Amorim, the managers, he named all one things at Chelsea. They're 100% obsessed with them. I hope he continues to throw them under the bus. I wonder what spin we get this week, says Strickland. I can't predict what's going to happen this week, but it could be, like I said, seismic. It could be very big. It's a very big thing that Amorim's done today, and I applaud him for it. Sammy says, if you break up with a partner every 2 years, it would be safe to assume after the 7th breakup, maybe you're the problem. Glinios out, says Sammy. The problem, Mark, is Amorim actually did go to a back four for 2 games, and then he's in the last 2 he's reverted back, so he already compromised his principles, his coach plays. Yeah, because he's been forced to do it, hasn't he? If we lose in the FA Cup, that'll be the end, says Carl. What is so funny about this whole situation is that Amorim will probably get fired and the club will go and buy Anderson and Belabor, says Bradley. Only ones who look bad here is Ineos. Sack them all, says Sound Dog. Man United literally said he was head coach when appointed. Just because Amorim spoke out doesn't mean it's right. 2 sides to every story. Sir Jim speaks, says Rory. The Glazers can remove Ineos as well. I mean, I know they're completely incompetent, but the fact is things have got worse. The Glazers are in that period now where they can talk to somebody, aren't they? I know they're absolutely rubbish, but I'd be looking at these people I've brought in to run the football side of things, and they've made it worse. Amorim won't take a payout, in my opinion, to not sign an NDA, says Gypsy. If the manager has been lied to, then Sir Jim needs to get an experienced football director with a CV, and the same with the CEO, says GD7. Mojo says, finally a manager is worth his salt, calling out the owners and the board. Press release last year said he was signed as head coach. It's on United's website, says D. Well, look. He's saying he's a manager, not a head coach. I don't know. I can see this as a positive. Hope this means the owners go. I see it as a positive. I see it as a massive positive because no matter what happens, anything Amorim ever says in the future about projects and trusting the manager and trusting the process, I'll just say, well, I don't know. You've said that before, and look. This is why I love Amorim. He says it straight. Says Protes. Mark, do you think he'll last till the summer? I can't see how this will work, says Kerr. No, I don't, Kat. I don't see how this works. I don't see how this works. I I think it's important to say that he hasn't said anything about the owners. This is about Wilcox and Barada. There might be a way through it if those two were removed. I mean, I don't know how Sir Jim Ratcliffe can be happy with those two anyway. I don't know how he can be happy with those two. But look, something's going to have to change. 9 times out of 10, it will be the manager. Slow Sports News says, did you read Scholes' son's response? No. If you want to tell me it, I'll certainly react to it. If he can't play with a simple classic 4-3-3, is an absolute shambles. It's a tough job. He needs to buckle down and get us some results. Why should he though, Hyans? Why should he play a 4-3-3? He was recruited to do something else, and they're not backing him. If I turn up at somebody's house and I'm a plumber and they say paint the fence, and I say I'm a plumber, and they go, well, there's a brush, I'm sure you can paint the fence. I'd go, of course I can fucking paint a fence, but that's not what you called me to do. And I'm not painting your fucking fence. Paint it yourself or get someone else who can do it. First and foremost, the contract was entered in between the club and the manager. They knew his system. Promises were made to sign players for his system. Now you want him to change. No go, sign his players. And I think that's the big thing, Lee Cape Town. You seem to get it. He was happy at Sporting. Man City were waiting for him. Man United swooped in. Let me tell you the story about the recruitment of Ruben Amorim. Man City wanted him. He was happy at Sporting, and that was expected to be offered to him in the summer. Man United sacked Ten Hag and approached him and said it's now or never. Do you think Ruben Amorim went, oh yeah, I'll definitely take this shit job? He was definitely made promises. And those promises would be, we want your system, we want your input, and we're going to get you your players to take Man United back to the top. And a year later, they're going, we're not going to get you your players, and we don't want you to play your system. And that's the situation. And that's why he said what he said today. Because a year ago, we went and took him out of a team where he was doing really well in a certain system. We promised him the earth, and then a year later, we've said, we want you to change who you are, and we're not backing you. Why would you not? Why would you sit back and take that? Go on, Amorim, take a flamethrower to the place. No difference between Murta and Wilcox. The leaks about the system are utter bullshit. He would need January signings either way, out wide and in midfield. Emily's spot on. Even if he changes to a back four, he still needs signings in midfield, doesn't he? He still need wingers. Mike JW says, oi, Wilcox, you're a sporting director, not a coach. Who has Wilcox coached? Nobody. I back Amorim on this. He's the manager and the coach. Yeah, and I've heard this before. I've heard this before about Wilcox and his tactical input. He's never managed a bloody cat. He's a youth team guy and a director of football at Southampton who now thinks he knows about how Man United should play. Piss off and go and get a job in the lower leagues and become a manager if that's what you want to do. You know? What influence has Darren Fletcher got in all of this, says PJ? Well, I don't know. All I've been told is that if Amorim gets removed, he's interim. And that might not be accurate, but, you know, I don't know. Esteban says, Mark, it's scary. Many fans are supporting the board because they don't like Amorim. What manager on the planet could fix this? We're in doom cycle. Esteban, I don't care if people want to support the board over Amorim. That's up to them. That's opinion. That's fine. It's all part of the process. But if you trust the board, you know, they appointed Amorim. So if you're siding with the board over Amorim, they appointed Amorim and then they didn't back him. So why would you support them? They're more responsible, clearly. I've heard people I like go full journalist mode and complain about how many games he's lost and he's lucky to have a job. I'm fuming. He's finally calling out the top. Yeah, but you know what, Inquisition? Remember what we were talking about on Thursday before all this came out? Is it not sinister to you that no journalist, no media outlet, no ex-players ever call out Wilcox, Barada, Ineos or the Glazers anymore? The manager comes out and calls out Wilcox and Barada. It'll be very interesting to see what those journalists, media outlets and ex-players do over the next few days because they don't call out Barada and Wilcox. They don't call out the club. Now, a lot of them don't do it because they need access to the club. A lot of them don't do it because they've got good relationships with the club. Amorim is what is always seen as expendable. So how are they going to react over the next few days? Are they going to react like many of us and say Amorim's right? Or are they going to come out and say, oh, he's wrong, he's lost it, he's got to go? It'd be very interesting to see how they react because they don't call out the club. They don't call out the board. So it'd be very interesting. The board is thinking monetary. He's thinking about winning. We're in 5th due to him, but look how far we changed. Formation up to debate, says the Moose one. I'm so glad Amorim came out and said this. It's about time, says Adam. I would love to have Amorim succeed in a new ownership. I would love him to be like Sir Alex Ferguson, says Yas. We need to get behind the manager. It takes guts to come out and complain about the board. We need the board out, so Jim and the Glazers out as well, says Ashley. The project died when Ashworth was sacked. I got the feeling he anticipated a system change wouldn't be backed, causing the fallout and his removal, says Josh. Well, I read something today that United were interested in Amorim in the summer and Wilcox wasn't on board with it. But I don't know whether that's accurate. That was the summer before we got him. Patrick Lynch said if he's going to be sacked, he might as well air the dirty laundry and confirm what we all know. It's a complete shit show behind the scenes. It's no wonder we're terrible on the pitch. How could we be good, says Patrick Lynch. He's crying out for depth. No reason why Glinios couldn't have had us prepared for the 1st of January with some extra depth for today. Experience, a good midfielder, a loan signing, anything. Amorim in, says Jonathan. Gnome United, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much for getting your badge in, pal. Mike JW says, cannot trust anyone but Amorim because at least he had the guts to call these arseholes out. Wilcox is a failure. Barada too, because even if Amorim goes, the truth is out there. Yeah, it is. You're right. Rory says, if you get the chance, check out the article from the Telegraph, Ineos in Trouble. Titled, Radcliffe battles to save Ineos from drowning under £18 billion of debt. Sounds like a good read, mate. I'm glad he's speaking up, but he's almost gone now, says W. Oh, yeah, I agree with that. You know, his statement is back me or sack me. And to back him, they've probably got to sack Wilcox and Barada, and they're not going to do that. So they'll sack him. Did you notice Ruben's on the bridge tearing up and chucking while leaving the press? It's really sad, says Mohammed. Ruben is in a win-win situation. Call out these frauds, and if they give him the chop, he gets his payout with his head held high. Glinios out, says Simon. You know what, Simon? You're absolutely spot on, and nobody's figured that one out. Ruben Amorim cannot be sacked without a payout, and he's clearly being undermined every bloody week. So what he said in that interview is not sackable in the sense that he'll lose his payout. He's basically saying, I'm here to do my job and everyone else should do their job. Back me or sack me. He's not done anything that's going to get him done for breach of contract. And this is where managers should be a little bit more savvy, because Maresca did the same. You toe the line until you're disrespected, and then you do stuff like this that disrespects your employers, and forces them into a decision of basically sacking you, but you get your money. So Amorim has played the power play here. He's played the power card, and he's right to do it, because all that's going to happen is he's going to be miserable and undermined and not get supported in the window. I sensed this was coming on Friday when he said, I'm not going to get any players in January. I would not be surprised if he's gone this week, the more I think about it. But I would love to think that Sir Jim Radcliffe has got something about him, because he's meant to be a lifelong Man United fan, and he might remove the real problems, but I don't know. Will this club ever return to glory, says Mendoza? Very unlikely. FC 26 could be back tomorrow, Sean, but then again, we might be busy with United news. Let's see. Karaoke Club says he's trying to get the sack. He knows he ain't going to stay after his 18 months are up and that he's not being supported. Bacon sandwich has to be with brown sauce or you're sacked, Mark, says Richard. Board need to back, sack, or the fans may crack, says Chris Jackson. Only the dumbest of the dumb hire a specialist and then not back him. Is that what they have in charge? Not the best in class, but the clueless, says Mike JW. And if failure were a strategy, the Glinios, Ineos and Amorim have perfected it. All out, says Sal. Well, remember, this is the ownership that brought in Sir David Brailsford to run a strategic review that produced absolutely nothing. I mean, I've never known a strategic review produce nothing. Goldbridge says people should be worried about Amorim getting sacked. Ineos won't go down the idealistic, opinionated manager route again. They'll go for Liam Rosenior route, a wide-eyed company man just happy to get the job. Darren Fletcher. Marlow United says the board has used Amorim as cannon fodder from day one. They are cowards. Amorim in, says Marlow. Amorim is a blagger. How do we know he didn't promise to coach the system to these players? And to be honest, even players Amorim signed don't seem to get it, says Roy. Nice to see a Glazer blot in here. Why don't you start protests against them, Mark, says Millen. How's that going to work? What should I do? Drive up to Manchester with a sign and just start walking around? How's that going to work? I mean, I'd love to know how that works. If Amorim gets sacked, I mean, and here we are again. pointing fingers at each other. This is how the Glazers always win. What's a brilliant comment, Milan? Let's start fighting amongst ourselves just when there's something actually happening. It's the same old mistakes. You make the same mistakes all the time. Pointing fingers at each other. Why don't you do something about it? Why don't, and the Glazers sit there going, our work is done. We'll survive another 10 years. If Amorim gets sacked, he got sacked in 6th place as Will. Maresca got moved out in 5th. Amorim using Bruno in the midfield is sacking himself. We have the best 10 in the league, and to top it off, we bought 2 more 10s in the summer, says Finn. For once, can the Nevilles of this world shut up? Our legends have their titles now. Please back off, says Mojo. I don't know whether he said anything. I applaud Wilcox for doing his job as a director of football. We play better with the back 4 and need just 3 or 4 quality players for top 4 consistency. If Ruben can't see the value in financial sense, he should be sacked, says Ashy. I mean, are you Wilcox in disguise? Are you Wilcox in disguise? Have you ever heard such shit in all my life? I mean, mate, your message has got more holes in it than a block of cheese. I applaud Wilcox for doing his job. He appointed a guy who plays a 3-4-3, lied to him, and is now trying to stab him in the back. Oh, yeah, I'd love to work for Wilcox. I'd love to work for a guy that lies to me and then throws me under the bus. Absolutely, the trust must be going through the roof. Amorim has been a disaster. Pure punt to back him, says Robert McCormack. Mate, they appointed Amorim. What is it about you and some people tonight that are going, get rid of Amorim, let's support the board? How's about fucking going after the board and Amorim will get sacked by the new one? It never, ever amazes me. It never stops amazing me, how naive some of you are. Let's sack another manager and support the board. It's like being back in 2015. It's every fucking time. Well, they're right. He is a crap manager. Sack them. He's literally sat there in an interview telling you how shit it is to work for a bunch of liars. And you're saying, sack him. He's literally telling you they lied to him about what they've offered him. And now he's paying the price for it. And you're saying, well, you signed the contract. Get rid of him. Madness. It's on X. I can send it because of the profanity. It's a Slow Sport News. Well, you could have told me roughly what it was. I'm firmly Team Amorim here, but it clearly said head coach in the announcement. And I remember that detail being topic in the media. I hope he wins, says Hat to Hat. Yeah, but just because it said head coach, you don't know the details of that. Like, head coach at Chelsea will be, we buy the players, we sell the players, you coach the team. I know for a fact that Amorim is on the recruitment board and has a say on the recruitment board. So head coach at Chelsea won't be on the recruitment board, but he is. So it might say he's head coach, but the niche of his contract probably gives him a lot of responsibility that's more like being a manager. Arsenal is dominating the league and looking to strengthen the squad while United is going through the manager change for the 5th time, says Kia. Why these managers are so stupid to accept this job and then act surprised when not backed? Imagine chaos if manager starts refusing the job, says Sarvish. Well, if they're lied to and their contract says something and then the club don't follow it, who knows? Matt says they won't sack him now because they know if they do it now, questions will be raised, but he will be getting sacked as soon as there's an excuse. Well, the big problem that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's got is that he came in 2 years ago and said he was going to make things better. And when Amorim gets sacked, it's £550 million worth of expenditure, 2 sackings of managers, a sacking of a director of football, all in the space of 2 years, all on Ineos's watch. And they can't go anymore. Well, there's a lot of mistakes by the Glazers, but we're here now. Dun, dun, dun. We're here to save the day. And actually, all they've done is compact all the Glazer mistakes into 2 years. So, yeah. Baleba has been brilliant in the AFCON. We need him badly, says Jason. Yet he's shit in the Premier League. There was an early interview with Amorim, stated he was the manager and laughed at the head coach question. He cannot coach this board out of ideas, says Mark. Barada picked Amorim and Wilcox. Who's in charge of recruitment? Did not him picked. 2 directions just on the board. Amorim never had a chance, says Dad. And who's a worse owner, Levy or the Glazers? Well, Levy's gone now. If I was to Jim, I'd be preparing to sell my shares and focus on my failing petrochemical company. Remember, he said he'd leave if he got abuse, says Andy. Look, hopefully it could be the beginning of the end. Hopefully it could turn into something like that. I mean, it's chaotic. It's a mess. And I tell you what, Sir Jim Radcliffe, whatever you think about him, it's a very, very difficult situation to turn this around because it's a mess. And as I said a minute ago, he's going to have to, they've made a lot of mistakes. Yeah. Have you seen this comment from Jamie Carragher? With the squad United have, they should be challenging for the Champions League spot. Amorim isn't even a competent Premier League manager. I don't know if this is a real comment, but I've seen a load of people saying it. So he's saying with the squad United have, they should be challenging. Hold on a minute. Let me just double check because I want to make sure this is absolutely spot on. But this is what I mean. Oh, mainstream media backing the Glazers. What a surprise. I'm absolutely stunned that the mainstream might be backing the Glazers on this and, scapegoating the manager. So if this is true, a quote from Jamie Carragher, with the squad United have, they should be challenging for the Champions League spots. Amorim isn't a competent Premier League manager. Champions League is 4th place. We're 3 points off it. I'm not happy with the way we're playing, by the way. I think we've dropped a lot of silly points, but the league don't lie. After 20 games, 3 points off 4th. But hey, you know what? What do the mainstream do? What do the journalists do? Toe the party line for the Glazers. What a surprise. What a surprise. Look, I'm not happy with the way we're playing. Our win ratio is not very good, but we're 3 points off 4th. Last time I checked, that's the Champions League. It's 1 win. We've got to play Liverpool at Old Trafford. We've beaten them at Anfield. We're 3 points off 4th. Whether you like it or not, we're 3 points off 4th. It's a fact. It's a fact. And, I look at it and I think the logical thing to do is buy players in January. That's what any ambitious football club would do. Even if you think he's not the guy, you'd buy players in January that the next manager can use. I've said this before. Give him till May. Give him some players in January. And the best thing is, the players you buy in the midfield will still be needed by the next manager anyway. So back him in January. But they don't want to seem to do it. At what point does the club become a poison chalice? Surely managers would look at potential Man United job and think that. Managers are very egotistical, Harry. Though they'll still take the job. I don't think that'll ever happen. If I'm being if I'm being honest. Sean says we should buy Premier League proven players like Anthony Robinson. Delon says, you may question his management, but his honesty stands out. He's genuinely trying to improve the club. If someone like him has reached this stage, imagine what's happening behind the scenes. I've always said that about Amorim. I've always said I like listening to him. I've always liked his integrity and his honesty. I don't always agree with everything he does, and I certainly have held him to account. But in the whole time he's been at this football club, very similar to Ralph Rangnick, I didn't like some of his decisions, and I certainly didn't like the results, but I enjoyed listening to him. And I enjoy listening to Amorim. And, we're probably going to end up with another Ollie next. We're going to end up with a company man who's just massively appreciative to have the opportunity. We certainly won't sack Amorim and get a Conte or an Emery. We're going to go down the route of Mr. Inexperienced learner driver like Chelsea. And ultimately, we will be back in this position very, very quickly. Look, realistically, we can talk and talk and talk. But this is a monumental day in United's recent history that has, catastrophic and chaotic repercussions. And we're going to have to wait and see what happens because we're not dealing on a news article. We're dealing on the words of the manager that we all heard. So Man United have been undermined. Wilcox and Barada have been undermined. Sir Jim Radcliffe and the Glazers have got a decision to make. And if they did decide to sack Ruben Amorim, having not backed... I look at that league table and I go 3 points off 4th and we desperately need to sign players. I know what I need to do. I really shouldn't be sacking the manager because he's calling out the director of football. That's how I would look at it. As a footballing man, I would go, look at that league table, look at the team, I need to buy players and we need to go for it until May. I'm not going to sack the manager because he's not happy with the director of football because he won't back him. But that's the incredible situation we're in. Sometimes you've got to look at the facts. We're 3 points off fourth. We need players. The manager's called out the director of football and I'm going to sack the manager. That would be incredible to me, but that probably will happen. And also, you know what? I look at that bench today. It's just shit. It's shit. It's shit. And even if Bruno's fit, he's not a midfielder. Where's Mainu? You know, Bruno's going to be back before Mainu, and this was Mainu's time. There's lots of excuses, but the main thing is we want to be a good football team. And the only person who's asking for players is Ruben Amorim. And the people who are depriving it are the people in charge. So I know who I blame tonight. I know who I blame. Great show tonight. Thank you so much for everybody. Double D says the only people that don't know what's going on in the club are the idiots running it. Amorim knows what's needed. The fans know what's needed. Let the games begin. And JXSH has just gifted 5 memberships. You're a legend. Nearly 20,000 watching tonight. Bloody hell. We'll make sure you tune in at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning then, because I'm sure it's going to be a busy week. And Mag says the number of people placing all of the blame on Amorim is baffling. How do they not understand the Glazers are cancer killing our club? Mate, if they don't understand now, they're never going to understand. Let people breathe. Let people have their own opinions. It's absolutely fine. And let's be clear, the journalists, the ex-players and the media that pin it on Amorim, I'm not even shocked. I'm not even surprised, because they've been pinning it on him. They've been pinning it on Jose. They've been pinning it on Rangnick, and they've been pinning it on every other manager like Ten Hag for years. They don't call out the Glazers. They don't call out the CEO. They don't call out the sporting director. How many times did we hear ex-players or the media or journalists calling out John Murtagh and he was fucking useless, or Richard Arnold and he was useless, or Ed Woodward and he was useless? They just don't do it because they're all, I don't know why. You know, I don't know what relationships are going on. I don't know who's scratching who's back. I don't know if that happens, but I think in relation to the journalists, they're terrified because they can't get banned from the press conference, otherwise they're out of work. I think from the media, they need Man United. They need that relationship with Man United and they don't want to upset them because they want access to it. And from the ex-players, I don't know. I don't know. But you can't pin this on a Man United manager for basically saying, I've been lied to and I'm not being backed, so sack me or back me. I think, you know what? They might sack him and then you'd be very happy. So I've got no problems with him at all. If you don't like Amorim and you blame Amorim, he's basically saying, they're not backing me, they're not supporting to me, they've lied to me, sack me. So why would you be bothered anyway? And if you do agree with Amorim and he's exposing the board, why would you have a problem? I think it works for everybody. Stay safe, everybody. Take care. And we'll see what tomorrow brings. Thanks for watching. And I'll speak to you all in a bit. Take care.